All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Reader. So I'm going to cover three stocks on this one, maybe four if we've got time. SOFI, BBAI, and SMCI are the ones in my head. They all ended with an I. I think it just took a second to realize that. If I've got time, I'll throw in SoundHound as well. All right, so before I give opening thoughts on these tickers, the market itself was a little bit on the funky side. I wouldn't call it a bad day. Obviously, it was a green day, actually, if you look at it, right? But look at the day, right? We closed here on Friday, down here at 6,300 something. We gap up to 6,390, almost 6,400. Our high of the day actually goes into that. We open up here, but then come down more than we wanted to. And if you look at the hourly, the day starts up here and then makes its way down here. I'm a little bit excited about how the day ended, how that last hour there. But yeah, it was a really funky day. And all I really saw over the weekend was really good trade headlines. And again, you see the Dow Jones, this one did go red, but again, same thing. We close down here. We actually gap up and open all the way up here and then go down here, right? So the day started all right. Definitely didn't sustain it, to say the least, right? Where was your hourly? Nice. That's the same good hourly right there on the Dow Jones. I like seeing that. Obviously, we need more, right? But NASDAQ, this was the one that gapped up and you can basically say held. We just got a clean doji there. You know, on my last video, I talked about the high RSIs and I said it very nonchalantly. I really did. Maybe this is where I'm getting that first signal of let's pay a little more attention to it, right? But RSI is at an 87 on the daily. It's at an 87 on the weekly. Looking at the S&P 500, it's an 82 on the weekly, 82 on the daily, right? You know we're sounding the alarms at 80, let alone higher than that, right? And things should be extremely textbook when you're talking about any index, let alone all of them, right? And then Dow Jones, we said was the healthiest. Yeah, it's still the healthiest here on the daily and the weekly. Oops, sorry about that. Weekly's a little bit high at 75, but not quite 80 yet, right? So maybe this is just a little bit of an RSI correction. I don't really know. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. You know I'm not an economist. I don't do finance stuff in my life. That's not what my degree is in. I saw nothing but good headlines. He made what looked like decent deals. They're deals that weren't extremely different than what people were anticipating. And from what I saw, there's a lot of like investments as well as decent tariff percentages, right? So there wasn't a Trump reason for it, right? And again, like I said, nothing screams bad, right? But like something just felt funky, all right? That said, these are, oops, SPFI. Sometimes typos do good things. This one was not a good typo right there. When we're looking at SOFI, look, I almost care less about what we see on the screen right now. It is all about earnings tomorrow. You can see that 729 is earnings. They are estimating 6 cents positive earnings per share. We really want it to be 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Give me more than give me a higher EPS estimate. That's what we're looking for, all right? Beyond that, look, I'll tell you, I'm really not liking the technicals too much. Red over green, and not great volume. But hey, that's a very strong 20, and really, it, like I said, is all about the earnings tomorrow. And I'll give you my thoughts on the lines from there. All right. When we come into BBAI, look, this one is the exact same words I just said on SoFi. I think I see more bad than good. The problem is there are no earnings coming up that might, turn this all around. Right now, we are under the 8 and the 20. It's obviously just a single candle, so we can't get too worried, right? But that's not a great MACD. That's not a great RSI. And really, I've been saying it for the last bit, and that's not the volume we were looking for, right? I got really excited on this 1 minute candle pop. Where was it? I don't remember exactly where it was. Maybe it was this thing right here. I barely remember. Let's be honest. I'm wasting my time trying to guess where it was. But I was hoping the volume was going to come. It definitely has not. Not only did it not come, it actually keeps going lower and lower and lower, right? So we'll be talking about volume, I think, a bit more than what's going on up here, but we're still living in this 50-50 zone, right? We tried to escape the good side of it. I don't know if we're coming right back down to the low side of it. At the minimum, the question is going to be, what's this 20 moving average going to do right there, all right? Just in case I don't talk about it, I'll at least flash it right here. SoundHound, almost the exact same thoughts. What looked like a good candle, what looked like good volume did come, but it just quite didn't do what we wanted to do, right? We saw a doji right there. We saw another doji right there. That's a pretty rough candle after two dojis. Obviously, we're under the moving averages as well. It kind of makes me think that we're probably coming at 1075. I don't think we'll lose 1075, but if we lose 1075 on SoundHound, I would actually be wildly, wildly worried, all right? It kind of seems like 1240 is probably the main money line. I don't think I want to lower that 1260 though. I think between 1240 and 1260, depending your risk reward tolerance, I really wouldn't touch it under that zone right there. And really, in a lot of ways, it might just be worth waiting for 1265 or whatever, right? Get over that golden line right there. But hey, there's at least two strong lines, the 200 and the 50. We really shouldn't go lower than 1070. I think my worry will start to go exponentially higher if we did lose that line right there, all right? And then the last one I want to talk about, honestly, I almost wasn't going to cover it today, but Luke actually called it out on the Discord, and I think this is a real nice setup right here. SMCI. Look, I know my line is up here at 81. Trust me, I'm not going to talk about 81 just yet. That's a little bit too high, but it was basically the last things. Oh, I'll talk about this. I probably should have said that earlier. It was the last thing I said before I started recording. Look, SMCI, I think there's a good shot for it to run into the 70s. Actually, somewhere between 72 and 76 is kind of what we're seeing right there. Definitely a wall that we'll be talking about, and then obviously you see my line right there, right? But yeah, this is a real nice. There's a lot. This has been the opposite of what we've been seeing, right? Green over red on both MACD and RSI. 77's a little bit on the high side, but it's definitely not 80 yet. I like the divergence on both. You see how steep that is actually as I zoom in. And hey, looky, we're getting a nice volume day actually, right? So literally the exact opposite lower indicators than those other ones. And that's obviously a good thing because I was saying I wasn't liking those lower indicators down there, right? So cool. I think this is a good place for us right here. Let me go back to the first one. Before we do go any further and I give you more of my thoughts and opinions, what are we going to do? Same thing we always do. We're going to take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how these things are setting up short term. We have our 5 moving averages. There are horizontal support and resistance lines that I do draw manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Look, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But hey, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so grateful for it, all right? So let's get into SOFI. And look, you hear me say this every single time. I don't care if it's a blue chip $500 plus ticker. I don't care if it's a penny stock or anything in between. Earnings really live in their own world. Earnings are the craziest thing. I've seen good earnings bring bad candles. I've seen the dumbest reverse split horribleness of earnings bring big double digit, sometimes even triple digit candle pluses, right? So earnings really are their own little monster, and very often you're going to hear me say, just skip the earnings and either ride the wave up or avoid the avalanche down. That's as common a phrase as break all 5 and fly or lose all 5 and die. All right, I've just seen it so many times. All right, my kitty's trying to leave. What are you doing? It's the best part of the video. She's leaving. I apologize for that. So that's really what we're going into, and I said it in the beginning of the call. To me, and really when I say to me, it's not like I'm making this up. I would say this is fairly agreed upon. EPS, earnings per share, is arguably the most important thing that's said in an earnings. Guidance is arguably just as important. Some might say more, some might say less, right? But that 6 cents that you see right there is the estimated, and more importantly, it's the expected earnings per share. If you go below 6 cents earnings per share, you're not going to be doing well. All right. If you can beat it, almost everything else doesn't matter, and you'll see good things. That's in my head, my broad assumption across, right? So all that said, I think the last thing I do want to say before I say all that said, look, the one thing I looked at before I hit record, the last two earnings, it feels like we needed to wait a few weeks before we saw what happened. It was right here. We needed to wait a few weeks before we saw what happened, right? And clearly, two different sides of the sword on what happened, right? But none of them was as extreme as you would expect. Yeah, this was for sure a gap down. No one ever wants to see a gap down, but it pretty much sustained for, I mean, what looks like 1, 2, 3, yes, an entire month before the reality came, right? Yeah, this was actually a gap up open, doesn't really do much, and then 1, 2, 3, basically a month and a bit before it actually took off, right? So not a guarantee that the same thing's going to happen here, right? But just looking back, let's even look back at the last one. Well, I would say this one was the outlier. This one was part of the rise, and really the market was doing so much better before February, right? And even this little bounce, as good as it is, it's kind of a funky or different, right? But excuse me, I think that said, look, what I'm looking for is what that number is going to be. If we have good earnings, we're going to destroy 2240, and I'm just going to zoom out because it's the easiest thing to do. We're going to destroy that line, and if I had to guess, we'll probably just jump all the way to 2510. All right, I really don't, I mean, I'll draw the line, let's just make it exact, but like dun 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 25-3 is what I'm drawing, right? But to me, this is the golden line, and I think it's pretty funny that that's where we're coming up to at earnings, right? If we break 2240, we're going to jump to 25, and then from there, I think we're going to get all the love that comes with being in all-time highs, okay? If we get bad earnings, I do think the first place will go, I think I want to lower this line. I do. Let's lower this just a little bit. I'm going to take it to there. I think if we have bad earnings, we're going to come just below 19 to this 1890 line. And really, if it's that bad, we actually might fall into the 17 world at that 50 moving average. Because again, you break the 80, you go to the 20, you break the 20, you go to the 50, you lose the 20 and you'll drop to the 50. And that's the fear right there if it happens, right? Where are we on the weekly? It's actually the same thing. Yeah, look at that. It actually is almost perfect to what I just drew, right? So I think we'll fall down to that 1890, like I said, if it's bad earnings, and then yeah, from there, I mean, it's 1660 does seem realistic, right? It's very much a all-time high love and glory, or lose the 8 and 20 and you know, back down to the teens is what this is looking for, right? That same green might be the red that brings it down. Or again, you hear me say it all the time, and I'll end it with this, okay? All-time highs really is the best place for your money, because I'm telling you, there are no educated lines I can draw and say, hey, sorry, I think something's happening outside. Let me just check with my wife. No, I think we're all good. What is it called? There's no resistances up here, and trust me, no resistances is maybe the most beautiful two-word phrase in all of trading. All right, so let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Hey, if you listened to the last earnings and you have some better guidance that you heard and are expecting to get information on this call, please share it in the comments. You'll be surprised how many people actually read the comments, react to the comments, have conversations, right? So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. let's come into BBAI. And look, one thing I love saying is I'm much, much louder about my mistakes than my good calls. I think it sounds better if other people say I made a good call than like waste time and breath saying it. And really, as I'm talking about my mistakes, I'm reinforcing what I did and like learning it and trying not to make it, right? So it's good both ways, I'm telling you. So I was expecting so much more here, and clearly it hasn't happened. All right. And what was I expecting? I was expecting volume. So I'm going to come back. I don't remember. I think it was this day. See, sometimes it's really good when I actually do practice. It was this right here. It was 7:23 around 3 o'clock. Let's go to the minute chart. Let's come to 7:23. It's right here. And then let's zoom in. All right, let's zoom in, let's zoom in, let's zoom in, let's zoom in. This is the volume. 7:23 around. Nope, that's in the morning. Nope, I'm wasting minutes. I apologize. If you watch the video, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it happens. But again, there was a moment where it seemed like the volume was going to come. It clearly didn't, and you hear me say it all the time. Volume is king, and as much as I live and die by these lines, volume is the only thing that ever makes me say, instead of starting up here like we normally do, I'm going to bring us down here. All right, because for real, when you don't have, it's, look, I don't surf. I live in California, but like, yeah, I don't surf. I don't do nature, and that's part of nature. If there's no waves, you ain't surfing, right? And for us, that means volume. If no one is coming to buy the stock, there is no wave up for us to ride. We're just watching it get flat and flat and flat, and that's not what we're here for, all right? The other thing to talk about volume before I come up here, look, our white line is a 50-day window, all right? So I'm going to really quickly count. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This right here is a 10-week window. That means this, and I'm not going to count it because obviously we had July 4th was only 4 days and whatever, right? But this is roughly speaking all the days, all the volume that comes into this 50-day line. Right now, the peak of this volume is actually starting, and you can see it. It's bringing the white line up, up, up as we're going down, down, down. It almost feels like I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, maybe even it. Okay, it didn't zoom the way I wanted, but we need this to get out of the middle and closer to the end so that we can start getting rid of these days and bring this white line back down to reality. And what does that mean? You know, it's crazy. It doesn't even need to happen here, but you can kind of see it. This peak right here starts to come down right there. And if I had to guess, that's going to be about, after day 50 of all of these things, right? Hopefully that's making sense to you. But right now, my concern is these heavy volume days are still very much in the thick of the 50 days and are very much dictating where this white line is. And we're so far from the white line where we are actually the D and F student in the classroom. We are nowhere near the average. We are not a C student right now. And that's making things tough, all right? From there, we're starting to compound the fact that we're actually under the 8 and the 20. All right, just zooming out, zooming out, zooming out. Look, even these little moments, there wasn't a crazy, and look, I would actually say even now, it's not that crazy below, right? So it goes back to what I said in the opening thoughts. You can't overreact on a single candle. We need confirmation up. We need confirmation down, right? This is worrisome for sure. And my next expectation would be it's gonna come to 660 is where this line is, right? I would be very worried under that line right there. What is that? 30 cents right there? 40 cents. It's not a crazy drop, right? It's not. And again, this has been the 50-50 zone. And maybe what's starting to become the trade is a trade from down here, sell up here. Down here, sell up here. Down here, sell up here, right? Hey, maybe it's going to keep going and you might miss it, but whatever. You can buy it back after you sell it, right? But like, we are living in this 50-50 zone until we get a good thing. And like I said, we still need confirmation tomorrow. But I think if we lose that line right there, we're probably going to be heading back down there, right? It will be very bad if we lose 660. I've been saying that. That's obviously why this one is our red death line and that's our golden good line, right? So can't go below that. But hey, it seems like it knows how to come to it, and then jump and jump, right? So let's see what happens. And hey, realistically, hopefully we never go below this, right? I think simply put, you got to wait for this to get broken. Best place, and again, it seems like you're throwing away a lot of percent and a lot of profit, but maybe it's even worth waiting until 825 breaks, right? Just get over the biggest candle to the left and attack from there, right? Because there's still a lot of trading up here, right? We still got a full dollar even over that line, right? So it's more than 10%. That's a good double-digit gain, and you can never poo-poo a double-digit gain, right? And some stuff above it if it continues, right? So yeah, we're living in this 50-50 world, and I'm telling you, it's volume that's dictating everything. Obviously, I said in the beginning, and we'll just end it with there, I'm not liking this MACD and RSI, right? Sometimes we'll have one that's red over green and then another one that's green over red. That kind of helps me feel a little bit good about an offset. I'm just not liking how bad that divergence is, right? I like the divergence up, not down. This one's kind of saying green wants to like drop pretty, we're still positive. We're not under in the negative, right? But that's I don't want to lose the 20 and come to the 50, right? I think that's my biggest worry. And right now, that's a big drop right there. And yeah, you have to consider that in your back pocket, right? And that's essentially what I'm saying when I say really bad things will happen if you lose 660. If you lose 660, it might come down to that 550 right there pretty quickly, actually. All right. So watch the volume. I think my money line. I think the bare minimum for this thing to have a decent day is 100 million shares. It's going to do absolutely nothing under 100 million shares. What it really needs to do is 150 plus, right? You can see the white line sitting at 145 million. 150 plus is going to get me over the white line, right? But yeah, if you can't at least give me 100 million shares, and what is that hourly? 100 divided by a 7-hour trading day. If you can't get 15 million shares in the first hour, oh man, it's going to be a rough day for BBAI. All right. So I don't really have time for SoundHound. I actually think I said everything that was important in the opening thoughts. Let me know your opinions. When's the earnings? We still got time. Let me know let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Let's come into SMCI. I really need some water, actually. Excuse me. Okay, cool. Hey, I see it going up a little bit after hours. You know me. I'm never here to give any extra love to after hours. To me, regular hours matters more, but that's a nice thing to see. So I actually was not planning on covering this, but it was one of the last things we talked about on the Discord. I love this place. The room is free. There's a link in the what is it called? In the chat. But SMCI, hey, I wasn't looking at anything, but right here, and again, I'm a big fan of the difference of opinions in rooms, right? First thought was 620, wow, 6270 is basically a huge resistance. If it gets over that, that's when it might be worth jumping into, all right? I actually think it might be ready to run into the 70s. I definitely saw today's candle. I do see this line, and we'll talk about this line shortly, and I'm basically reading this, but I think today's candle and the gas in the tank, I think I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I think we might go into the 70s right now. And really, the 72 that I was talking about is actually a 20% gain, right? Because I'm talking about $12 on a $60 stock. So let's zoom out just a bit. So what am I seeing? Look, this line alone is up here because really red, and obviously we've passed it, but man, that right there is a pretty nice red. And look, we're actually there right now. Are we at 50% candle? That's actually almost to the penny where we're at, right? So 50% candle of this thing right here. And then if I had to guess, boom, right? 62.50 is where I'm clicking. 62.75 is what was said in the Discord, right? 62.60, whatever. I see that, and you hear me saying it all the time. The gap fill border, right? There's definitely a gap down right there. The last good green candle before the gap down sometimes is harder to break than it looks, and I do think it's fair to call that out. What was the exact line? Yeah, 67, whatever, right? Same thing. I for sure see that. I think it's worth putting that there, right? But man, I loved today's candle. You can see that the high of the day was $60.08. Close of the day was just a few pennies below that. Barely the smallest of smallest wicks right there. I like today's volume, and it actually was better than the last good day of volume, right? So I like this, let alone the fact that we gap up and go. I think that's, and really ultimately, when I'm moving my money and I'm looking at stuff during the day, I'm looking at the 1 and the 2, right? And that's where I have some other indicators that tells me what I like to call gas in the tank. So I like the thing, and it feels like it might actually want to smash through this thing. And where was the 72? I think the 72 was down here. Yeah, 72.50 is basically down here. Look, honestly, I'm going to delete this line because I don't think I need to draw that. But it's basically the bottom of that candle right there. It's almost 50% of that candle right there. And it's only dojis. It really is, right? But there's a little bit of a horizontal right there. So that's probably where I got that line from. But really, ultimately, green, 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 red, 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 nothing, nothing, nothing. Makes me actually think for sure from 62.50 to 81 seems very, very realistic. It actually almost seems like there's enough room to go. 77 is definitely a higher RSI than we'd like, don't get me wrong, but it's still below 80, and it actually wasn't that long ago that I was up here at the 86 world. 76 was actually right there too, but yeah, it's been up there before. So where are we on the weekly? Little bit on the higher side on the RSI. It's 76. It's not quite super super high. The one nice thing to see is it seems like, and again, it's obviously still very very early. A lot can happen between the next couple days, but that's a beautiful candle on the weekly coming off a break of all the moving averages, right? Because that hasn't been the prettiest of breaks, right? It's not quite over. Doji, 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 doji. This seems like a nice candle after essentially a what, a month row of a doji, right? So, um, yeah, I think the last thing that's just catching my eye is most of this happened after that earnings right there. When's your next earnings? Earnings is next week, so just keep that in mind. But for now, it really does seem like it's going to do its best to maybe at least come to that 72, 72.25, 72.50, give or take, whatever that range is right there. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Oh, I appreciate you so, so much.